This is Echoes of the Silk Road, where legends, dreams, and eerie bedtime tales unfold. Close your eyes, listen closely, and let the echoes guide you. Today we have a story about the urban legend of the Midnight Game. Before we get into the story, I would like to give you a breakdown on what the Midnight Game is if you've never heard of it. They say if you play the Midnight Game, you'd better be prepared to run, because once you start, there is no way out, only survival, or something far worse. Tonight, we unravel the dark ritual known as the Midnight Game, a chilling urban legend whispered across internet forums and deep recesses of the occult community. It's a ritual that dares you to invite an entity into your home, an entity known only as the Midnight Man. And once he's inside, he plays by his rules. The Midnight Game gained traction in the early 2010s, going viral on sites like Creepypasta and Reddit's No Sleep. But its roots may be older. Some say it stems from a real pagan punishment ritual intended to instill fear and discipline in those who dared break spiritual codes. Supposedly, it was used as a form of supernatural justice, forcing the guilty to face their own worst fears, manifested by the entity that answered the call. Others believe it's entirely modern, an internet-born ritual design for thrill seekers, akin to Bloody Mary or the elevator game. But unlike those urban dares, this one has rules, precise, specific, and deeply unsettling. Rules that must never be broken. Here's how to play the Midnight Game, should you dare to. To begin, you'll need a piece of paper, a writing tool, a pen, a needle, or a drop of your own blood, a candle, a lighter or match, a wooden door, salt, and most importantly, a will to survive. Step 1. The invitation. At exactly 11:59 p.m., you must write your full name, first, middle, and last, on the piece of paper. Prick your finger and drop a bit of your blood onto the name. Allow it to soak in. Place the paper in front of the wooden door, then light the candle. Now knock on the door 22 times. The final knock must strike precisely at 12 a.m. Then, open the door and blow out the candle. You have just invited the Midnight Man into your home. Step 2. Survive. Relight your candle immediately. From this moment until 3:33 a.m., you must move through your house in complete darkness, keeping the candle lit at all times. Do not stop. Do not fall asleep. And never, ever remain in one place for too long. If your candle goes out, you have exactly 10 seconds to relight it. If you fail, surround yourself with a circle of salt immediately. Stay within the salt until 3:33 or until the game ends. If you do neither, the Midnight Man will find you. And what he does when he catches you, no one can say for sure. Some say he drives people mad. Others say they vanish completely. Here are some signs to let you know that he is near. Players report certain signs that mean the Midnight Man is close. Those being sudden temperature drops, flickering candles or lights, soft whispers, the feeling of being watched, tall, shifting shadows just beyond your peripheral vision. Most chillingly, some claim that if you stare into a mirror during the game, you may briefly see him, tall, shadow-thin, eyeless, grinning. Many sources stress that the midnight game is not a hoax or a prank. Once invited, the entity does not always leave, even if you survive until 3:33 a.m. Some players report phantom knocks, repeating dreams, or a lingering presence long after the game ends. They say once you open the door, it never truly closes. Online forums hold hundreds of first-hand experiences. Most are written anonymously, often by people who seem deeply shaken. Some describe being trapped in their own homes, chased room to room as their candles flickered madly. Others claim to have lost time, entire hours, vanishing after their candle blew out. And a few say they never got a finish to their story because something stopped them from typing further. Whether a test of courage, a form of supernatural discipline, or pure internet fiction, the midnight game has earned its place among the most disturbing modern rituals. And now, let us take you inside the story of one who dared to play. It was a night like any other night in the small, sleepy town of Miller's Creek. The kind of night when the streetlights hummed low against the chill air and the houses stood like quiet sentinels beneath the ink-black sky. The year was 2003, and all across town, people went about their business, blissfully unaware of the ritual that was about to unfold in one of the bedrooms on Birchwood Lane. Lydia had always been drawn to the strange and unexplained. While most of her friends spent their evenings chatting about boys and the latest trends, she was glued to the flickering screen of her desktop, browsing forums filled with tales of ghosts, urban legends, and the occult. It was a hobby that made her both intrigued and uneasy, like walking a fine line between curiosity and fear. Tonight, though, something was different. It had started innocently, a conversation on one of those eerie online message boards. Lydia had found herself reading a thread titled, "The Midnight Game, Dare to Play?" At first, she dismissed it as another internet hoax, one of those viral stories that circulated every few months. But then something about the ritual's details piqued her interest. The precision, the dark atmosphere, it seemed too structured, too intentional to be entirely made up. The rules were simple, but unsettling. At 12 a.m., you were to perform the ritual alone. You'd write your name on a piece of paper, pricking your finger and letting a drop of blood stain the ink. Then, you'd knock on a door 22 times, with the last knock striking at midnight exactly. After that, you would blow out your candle and wait in the dark. But the game didn't end there. The Midnight Man, an ancient entity, would come for you. And if your candle went out, you had 10 seconds to relight it. If you didn't, you had to protect yourself with salt. If you failed, there would be a price to pay. It sounded absurd. Of course, a silly ritual designed for thrill seekers. Just another story to entertain the bored and the brave. Yet, despite herself, Lydia felt a strange pull. Her heart raced as she imagined the shadowy figure lurking in the dark, watching her from the corners of her room. She set her alarm for 11:55 p.m., deciding she would play just for the thrill. She wasn't one to believe in superstitions, but there was something alluring about the idea of testing the unknown. Something compelling that made the usual fears feel distant, like something that didn't quite touch her, but still tugged at her. When the time arrived, she stood in her bedroom, the clock on her nightstand glowing, 11:59 p.m. She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. On the desk, before her lay the paper, a pen, and a small candle she'd found in her drawer. She glanced at her reflection in the window, a brief flash of hesitation before she reached for the pen and pricked her finger, letting a small drop of blood fall onto the paper right beneath her name. Lydia didn't know why, but as she placed the paper on the floor and prepared to knock on the door, her bedroom door, she felt something stir inside her, a shift in the air, a chill that wasn't from the cool breeze outside her window. But it was too late to back out now. She stood before the door, her hand hovering over the wood. Then, as the clock turned midnight, she knocked. The sound echoed in the quiet house. Her heart beat faster as she counted. The knocks were clear, deliberate. The last one fell on the dot of midnight. Then, silence. She blew out the candle, and for a moment, nothing. The darkness was thick, suffocating, but nothing moved, nothing shifted. For a long while, Lydia stood there in the dark, waiting. Her breath slowed, and the tension in her chest faded a bit. She laughed nervously to herself, feeling foolish for even considering this ritual. But then the air grew colder. The temperature dropped. Lydia could see her breath puffing out in front of her face, like fog. She swallowed. Her pulse quickened. And that was when she heard it. The softest sound. A whisper. From the corner of the room, almost imperceptible, like the rustling of paper. A match. The candle was out. Her heart raced. The 10 seconds. 10 seconds to light it again. Lydia's hand fumbled for the lighter, panic rushing through her. But when she flicked it, the flame barely caught. She dropped the match, fingers slick with sweat. The whisper came again, closer this time. A scraping noise, like something dragging across the floor. She spun around, but the room was empty. No shadow, no figure, just the cold, damp stillness of the night. Then the whispers began, low at first, barely a sound above the hum of her heartbeat. But soon, the whispering grew louder, more insistent, and the shadows seemed to move. She turned back to the door, heart pounding in her chest, her hand reaching out toward the salt on her dresser. She needed to make the circle. The rules she remembered, but the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, shifting into unintelligible murmurs that felt like claws scraping against her skin. She could feel him. He was there. And then There was a knock at the door. Soft and slow. Then a voice. Let me in. Lydia's eyes widened. The voice was barely human, a deep rasp, unnatural. She backed away from the door, her heart hammering in her chest, every instinct screaming to run, but she couldn't move. The door rattled as though something or someone on the other side was trying to get in. The Midnight Man had come. Lydia stood frozen, the candle flickering wildly in her trembling hand. Her eyes were locked on the door, solid oak, unmoving, but something about it felt wrong now, like it was no longer just a door. The whispering had stopped. The knock had not come again. Silence settled over the room like a thick blanket. For a moment, it felt like the entity had passed her by. She stayed there, still as stone, until the candle steadied. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Her eyes never left the shadows. At 3:33 a.m., her alarm clock blinked strangely, the display warping, then suddenly went dark. The entire house fell into blackout. The candle sputtered and died. This time, Lydia didn't try to relight it. She just sat on the floor, curling her knees to her chest, her breath shallow, heart echoing like thunder in her ears. But nothing came. The darkness remained still, and just before sunrise, the power returned. Her lamp clicked on. The digital clock blinked back to life. 6:12 a.m. The game was over. That's what the rules had said, right? The Midnight Man only played until 3:33. She had survived, or so she thought. The next day, everything felt off. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror lagged half a second behind her movements. Her dog, usually friendly, refused to enter her room, growling low whenever he passed the door. And at night, she dreamed of the hallway outside her room, stretching on forever, with the sound of slow, steady knocking in the distance. She told herself it was just trauma, just lingering fear. But on the fourth night, she found her name, written in red, on the inside of her closet door. She lived alone, and beneath it, in smaller, jagged letters, were three chilling words. Still playing, Lydia. The game ends at 3:33, unless, of course, you lose track of the rules. Unless you invite him in too far. Unless he decides you're fun to keep around. Thanks for listening to Echoes of the Silk Road. Sleep well, and remember, not every whisper is just the wind.